if we can do this small plus up in the environmental cleanup account for small sites. And with that, I'll yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose? The gentleman from New Jersey rise.
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment, but I do appreciate my colleague's advocacy for removing uranium tailing at the former uranium ore processing facility in his congressional district, Moab, Utah, to protect the Colorado River and downstream water users. There has been, as I'm sure he would admit, tremendous progress at this site, where work was accelerated with an influx of $100 million from the stimulus bill or the Recovery Act. Our bill, for the record, fully funds the President's request for non-defense environmental cleanup. It provides $198 million to sustain ongoing cleanup projects. While this is a reduction from fiscal year 2012, it is a reasonable one considering the need to reduce overall federal spending in our bill. Within that amount, the amount of funding for the Moab project, which my colleague is particularly concerned about, is sustained at $31 million, the same amount as the fiscal year 2012. This amendment increases funding over the request and over last year's level for Moab. While many sites like Moab are struggling to reduce cleanup work following the Recovery Act, we simply can't maintain these highly elevated funding levels. As an offset, this amendment proposes to take resources from important national security activities. It unacceptably strikes funding for priority investments in our nuclear security enterprise, which is both urgent and long overdue. And thus I urge members to vote no on his amendment and yield back.
Gentleman yields back. What purpose? Gentleman from Indiana rise.
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Appreciate the recognition and rise in strong support of the gentleman's amendment. I certainly appreciate the concerns he has expressed about cleanup nationally, as well as the site illustrated in Utah, and share his concerns that we are not adequately investing in cleaning up contaminated communities where we have a national obligation. This amendment would make a cut of $9.6 million to the weapons program, but would point out to my colleagues that while I support the weapons complex and its modernization, this is a very slight change in funding. An account that has a $7.5 billion allocation and sees a $275 million year increase for 2013 under the bill, and therefore do think the gentleman has taken a very reasoned approach and strongly support his amendment. I would yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Utah. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker,
what purpose? Gentleman from Utah.
I ask for a recorded vote.
General request for a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Utah will be postponed. Clerk will continue to read.
Page 25, line 6, Uranium Enrichment, Decontamination, and Decommissioning Fund, $425,493,000. Science, $4,824,931,000. Advanced Research Projects, Agency Energy, $200 million. Nuclear Waste Disposal, $25 million. Title 17 Innovative Technology Loan Guarantee Program. Sums derived from amounts received from borrowers pursuant to the Energy Policy Act of 2005 shall be collected in accordance of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974. Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Loan Program, $6 million to remain available until September 30th, 2014. Departmental Administration, $230,783,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2014.
For what purposes? Gentleman from Illinois rise.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Simkus of Illinois, page 28, line 16, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $10 million. Page 49, line 25, after the second dollar amount, insert increased by $10 million.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, has adequate funds to resume licensing activities for the Yucca Nuclear Waste Repository as called for in the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, but it refuses to do so. The NRC claims it has the legal authority to ignore the law duly enacted by this Congress if the agency isn't given enough money to, quote-unquote, finish the job. Under our Constitution, agencies are funded year to year. They are seldom, if ever, given enough money in 1 year to do everything the law tells them to do, especially for long-term projects. In 2008, when the Yucca Mountain licensing proceedings started, Congress appropriated NRC enough money to conduct the proceeding for that year. We sure didn't give it enough to complete the 3-year licensing proceeding. In 2009, we gave the NRC enough to carry out that proceeding for another year. The NRC didn't stop because it didn't have enough money to finish the job. In fact, NRC only stopped the licensing and refused to spend money appropriated for licensing based upon the administration's policy decision that the site is no longer workable. Now, after being hauled into federal court for ignoring its statutory duty to decide the license application in 3 years, the NRC claims it doesn't have to follow the law because while it has plenty of money to resume the licensing process and move it forward, it doesn't have enough money to finish it. When we pass a law and tell an agency to do something and give it enough money to do the job during a given year, can the agency just thumb its nose and say, we're not going to do that job at all because Congress didn't give us enough money to finish the job the next year? No agency has ever successfully told a court not to make it follow the law because in some future year it might not get enough money to do the job the law requires. Allowing NRC to cancel Yucca would unconstitutionally shift the balance of powers to executive agencies to evade congressional mandated legal obligations. The Federal Appellate Court has made its displeasure with the NRC's legal position known. We need to do the same. This is an outrageous unilateral decision to stop Yucca and not spend funds specifically appropriated for licensing activities. No agency can ignore a statutory duty to proceed with a project based on a subjective determination that adequate funds may not be available to complete the project in the future. We need to send a clear message to every agency that this isn't how our Constitution works. So on top of the over $10 million that the NRC has now to restart the licensing process, this amendment provides an additional $10 million in new funds so they can continue the process. The amendment is budget neutral and fully offset by taking funds from the DOE's Departmental Administration account. We are asking DOE to do more with a little less by making modest cuts to an account for salaries and expenses. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the amendment to fund the legally required licensing process for Yucca Mountain so that the NRC, an independent government agency, has funding necessary to finish their thorough, objective, and technical review. In doing so, the NRC, not political gains, will determine whether Yucca Mountain would make a safe repository. Having spent 30 years and $15 billion of ratepayer money, the American people at least deserve to find out the answer to whether Yucca is safe. And whether you favor nuclear power or Yucca Mountain isn't the only issue. The core issue is whether laws we pass may be completely ignored by agencies if they think that someday they may not get enough money to finish the job. Allowing agencies to get away with this results in shifting more of our legislative powers to unelected agency bureaucrats. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge all my colleagues to support the Shifkus Amendment, and I yield back my time.
Jim yields back. For what purpose? Gentleman from Washington rise.
I move to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in strong support of the Shimkus Amendment, which will assure that the NRC has the resources to carry out its responsibilities with regard to the nation's high-level waste repository at Yucca Mountain. I regret the position that the NRC has taken on this issue. On the Appropriations Committee, it is our belief that the Commission has adequate funds to resume licensing activities for the Yucca Mountain project as called for in the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. But the Commission simply has refused to act. The NRC claims it has the legal authority to ignore the law duly enacted by this Congress if the agency isn't given enough money to, quote, finish the job, unquote. Under our Constitution, agencies are funded year to year. They are seldom, if ever, given enough money in one year to do everything the law tells them to do, especially for long-term projects. In 2008, when the Yucca Mountain licensing proceedings started, Congress appropriated sufficient funds to the NRC to conduct the proceeding for that fiscal year. In 2009, we gave NRC enough money to carry out those responsibilities for another year. The NRC didn't stop because it didn't have the entire amount of money to finish the job. In fact, the NRC only stopped the licensing and refused to spend money appropriated for licensing based on a unilateral policy decision that the site is no longer workable. Now, after being brought to federal court for ignoring its statutory duty to decide the license application in 3 years, the NRC claimed astoundingly that it does not have to follow the law because while it had plenty of money to resume the licensing process and move it forward, it doesn't have every dollar in hand that would be required to complete the process. When Congress passes a law, appropriates money, and directs an agency to carry out an important government function during any given fiscal year, that agency cannot just thumb its nose and say, we're not going to do that job at all, because Congress didn't give us the money to do the following year's work. No agency has ever successfully told a court not to make it follow the law because in some future year it might not get enough money to do the job the law requires. Allowing the Nuclear Regulatory Commission such power to effectively cancel Yucca Mountain after Congress has enacted a law directing that it be accomplished would be an affront to the Constitution, and it should shift the balance of power to executive agencies to evade congressionally mandated legal obligations. The Federal Appellate Court has already made its displeasure with the NRC's legal position known. We need to do the same, and the Shimkus Amendment would assure that the Commission proceeds with the determination of whether Yucca Mountain is an appropriate location for a safe repository. The amendment is budget neutral, fully offset by redirecting funds from DOE's Departmental Administration account. I urge the adoption of the Shimkus Amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Chairman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the sponsor of this amendment, Mr. Shimkus, for bringing this amendment forward. And I want to thank the distinguished ranking member from my home state of Washington and the chairman of the subcommittee for their support also of this amendment. This is very serious business when the administration is absolutely ignoring statutory law that was passed by this Congress. And as a matter of fact, going way back to 1995, this House has acted 32 different times, principally on these appropriation bills as they come forward to address this issue. Generally, the issue is to not fund Yucca Mountain. 32 times this House since 1995 has said we are going to fund Yucca Mountain. So I think that the Congress has, and certainly the House, has well established what their position is and the seriousness of making sure that Yucca Mountain becomes our. I'll be more than happy to yield, my friend.
We passed a law that was signed by the President of the United States at that time. I can remember Congressman Udall was chair of the committee at that point. We passed the law, it said do Yucca Mountain, and that law has not been repealed. That's still the law of the land. And I yield back to the gentleman.
Reclaiming my time, that is precisely the point, and both you, Mr. Shimkus, and both of you made that point very well, but it needs to be repeated over and over. This is statutory law, and 32 different times it has been attempted to be modified on the House floor, and 32 times it has been rejected since 1995. Let me put a personal note on this because I represent the Hanford area in central Washington. It was one of the 3 Manhattan projects where we developed atomic weapons to win not only the Second World War but also the Cold War. But the process of developing those atomic weapons created a tremendous amount of waste. And the state of Washington has a legal agreement with the federal government to clean up that waste. It's called the Tri-Party Agreement. But just to give you an idea of the scope of what needs to be cleaned up there, the waste in underground tanks at Hanford would fill this chamber over 21 times with radioactive and/or hazardous waste. And that's the waste that goes that will eventually go to the repository after it is classified. So I thank the gentleman from Illinois for bringing this amendment forward, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. It's very, very important, and this will be the 33rd time I contend that this House will have reaffirmed that Yucca should be the repository. And with that, I yield back my time.
Gentleman back. For what purpose? Gentleman from New Jersey, rise.
Move to strike the last word. And Mr. Chairman, I rise to speak very briefly to associate my remarks with Mr. Dix, Dr. Hastings, and Mr. Shimkus. I want to thank them for bringing this amendment forward to increase funding for license for Yucca. This is a bipartisan effort, and it's not only bipartisan. The nexus is also support from authorizers and appropriators. So I'm highly appreciative of their initiative. I think it ought to be supported by all members, and I think we ought to move forward and send a message. We need to get Yucca open, and this is a way to reclaim the $15 billion that's been put into that effort by keeping the license process open and above board. And I yield back balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose? Gentleman from Indiana, rise.
Strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I appreciate the recognition and rise in strong support of the gentleman from Illinois' amendment. I believe the debate on this has been very fruitful and will simply add my voice to theirs. I believe the administration and the Senate's ongoing attempts to shut this activity down are without scientific merit and are contrary, as has been said on the floor, to existing law and congressional direction. Under the Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982, the federal government has a responsibility to demonstrate its capability to meet its contractual obligation by addressing the spent fuel and other high-level nuclear waste at permanently shut down reactors. We need to ensure that the administration does not unilaterally dictate policy for nuclear waste disposal, and I strongly urge my colleagues to join me in supporting the gentleman's amendment, and I would yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. Being the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I request a recorded vote.
The gentleman from Illinois requests the recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Loretta Sanchez of California, page 28, line 16. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $16 million. Page 30, line 25. After the dollar amount, insert increased by $16 million.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 5 minutes on her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment to increase funding for the National Nuclear Security Administration's defense non-proliferation programs by $16 million. This is a small restoration of funds, and it would restore the Global Threat Reduction Initiative to our fiscal year 12 levels. It's really just a small increase in funds, but it will go a long way, in particular for the President's top national security priorities. The $16 million would come from the Department's administration account. And specifically, this $16 million transfer would restore half of the funds that have been cut from the Global Threat Reduction Initiative to counter the risk of nuclear terrorism. The danger that nuclear weapons and materials might spread to countries that are hostile to us or to terrorists who want to use these against us is one of the gravest dangers that we have to the United States. And non-proliferation programs are one of the least expensive ways, and they're critical for the U.S. national security, and they must be a top priority. It's our line of first defense. It is the most cost-effective way to achieve the most urgent of goals, which is securing and reducing the amount of vulnerable bomb-grade materials. The funding of the Global Threat Reduction Initiative specifically supports securing vulnerable nuclear material around the world. In 4 years, in order to prevent this deadly material from falling into the hands of terrorists who are intent on doing us harm. And let me give you a specific example of why this is so important. The increase in the funds would help accelerate the conversion of research reactors and the removal of vulnerable, highly enriched uranium. The need to accelerate those important efforts can be seen, for example, in the example of Belarus, which had enough HEU for several nuclear weapons and agreed in 2010 to give up this material. Now, the NNSA cleaned out a portion of that material, but in 2011, Belarus reneged on its agreement because it was angry at the imposition of U.S. sanctions on that regime. There is still a significant amount of highly enriched uranium that sits there in Belarus. It could have been cleaned out by the NNSA if it had 5 more months before Belarus said no. This illustrates why it's so important for us to put the money in to go and clean these places up before people decide or new regimes come in and all of a sudden we can't get to what is very dangerous materials for us. We can't squander the opportunities to move forward on this urgent priority. The 9/11 Commission and the Nuclear Posture Commission noted that the addressing of this issue is important. This is a grave danger, with the Nuclear Posture Commission warning that the urgency arises from the imminent danger of nuclear terrorism if we pass a tipping point in nuclear proliferation. I urge support for a very modest increase of $16 million that will significantly help us reduce the dangerous delays to these very important non-proliferation programs. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from New Jersey, rise.
Move to strike the last word, Mr.
Gentleman is
Chairman.
recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the gentlewoman's amendment. Though less than last year's level, the $2.3 billion provided for defense nuclear nonproliferation already shows very strong support of our committee for nonproliferation. Our bill fully funds the core nonproliferation programs to secure vulnerable nuclear materials around the world in 4 years. In fact, it goes further and provides an additional $28 million above the request for the international programs under what's called the Global Threat Reduction Initiative. While I appreciate our colleagues' support for these activities, there's simply no reason to provide even more funding. The international activities have been clearly laid out in the 4-year plan, which peaked in 2011. These activities are supposed to ramp down as we accomplish more and more projects abroad. The President's budget reflects that planned ramp down. This additional funding would just likely sit there unexpended. The National Nuclear Security Agency already has considerable problems getting other countries to follow through with agreements. The General Accounting Office has confirmed that half of all the funding we provide each year is not spent. To use the words I heard a few minutes ago, the money is sitting there. This additional funding is simply not needed, and I ask the members to reject this amendment and yield back the balance of baton.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Indiana, rise.
Move to strike last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Appreciate the recognition. Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong support of the gentlewoman's amendment and commend her for crafting it. As I pointed out in earlier remarks, I do appreciate the chairman's efforts as well as the members of the subcommittee and full committee to increase money set aside for the Global Threat Reduction Initiative. In fact, the chairman was responsible for adding $17 million above the administration's current request. However, I do believe that more can be done, and that the Sanchez amendment, by adding $16 million to the Global Threat Reduction Initiative, would get us very close to our current year appropriated level. I believe, as a nation, our greatest security threat is not a launched attack by another nation state, but the use of nuclear weapons or materials in an act of terror. And given that particular threat, I do believe every dollar counts, and every dollar of these $16 million count, and would ask my colleagues to support the gentlewoman's amendment, and I would yield back my time.
Chairman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Being the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentlelady from California.
I would request a recorded vote, please.
Gentlelady requests a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California will be postponed. Are there amendments to this section? For what purpose, the gentleman from Vermont rise?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 7, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Welch of Vermont.
Gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Representative Gardner of Colorado and I offer this amendment. He's the lead sponsor, but his plane is late, and I'm standing in his place as a co-sponsor. Previous legislation by this Congress required our governmental agencies to do an energy audit. And the reason behind that energy audit was that it would lead to energy savings. There are firms that can do energy-saving contracts at no expense to the taxpayer, no expense whatsoever to the federal government. And the point of this amendment is to have the Department of Energy and other government agencies that have already been directed to do the energy audit to get on with it. And the reason we want to have it done yesterday is so that we can begin today achieving savings for the American taxpayer. There's a lot of debate in Congress among us as to what makes a sensible energy policy. But there is immense consensus that whatever energy policy you favor, saving energy, using less rather than more, saving taxpayer dollars, is a wise thing to do in every single policy that might be advanced by members on both sides of the aisle. So the point of the amendment that Mr. Gardner and I offers is basically to say to the federal government that, hey, let's audit the energy use in our buildings. Let's take practical steps to save money. Let's use a tool that costs taxpayers no money and guarantees that they'll save money, and let's get on with it. So, Mr. Speaker, we seek support for this amendment. But before I yield, I do want to mention one aspect of the bill to which I am opposed, and this I'm speaking on my own here, not with my co-sponsor. And that's a rider in the bill. Section 433 lays out a roadmap for designing increasingly energy-efficient new buildings, and the provision has a clause in it that will drive advances in building energy efficiency, deep retrofits, and savings in taxpayer dollars while reducing carbon pollution and leading by example. DOE is working to develop rules that implement Section 433 in a workable and flexible manner, but the funding rider would block that. I yield back.
Jim yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from New Jersey, rise?
Mr. Chairman, move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
We have no objection to the amendment. We think it's a good way to enact it. It's a common sense approach, and we have no objection.
Gentleman yields back. Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Vermont. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Being the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Clerk will continue to read.
Page 29, line 11, Office of the Inspector General, $43,468,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2014. Atomic Energy Defense Activities, National Nuclear Security Administration, $7,577,341,000.
Mr. Chair.
For what purpose, gentleman from Colorado, rise?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Polis of Colorado, page 30, line 5. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $298,221,000. Page 56, line 24. After the dollar amount, insert increased by $298,221,000.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Polis-Markey amendment would reduce funding for unneeded nuclear weapons programs by $298 million to reduce the budget deficit. At a time of decisions, a time of choices, we need to ask ourselves how much is enough with regard to nuclear defense. These programs included in this amendment have consistently been over budget and ineffectual. We simply shouldn't be increasing funding for them. Yes, actually increasing funding for them. This amendment simply eliminates the increase at a time when we're focused on deficit reduction. We all agree that we need to stop wasteful government spending. Congress has to justify every penny it spends to the taxpayers, the American people, the global markets. There just isn't any justification for spending an additional $300 million on top of prior year appropriations on weapons programs that aren't needed and aren't suited to our current conflicts and the war on terror. This account funds programs like the B-61 Life Extension Program. This program to modify nuclear bombs was originally set to cost $32.5 million and be completed in 2012. Since then, it's ballooned to $4 billion and won't be completed until 2022. At the time that this nuclear warhead is finished, if it's even finished by 2022, it might not even have a demission or a delivery vehicle. Then there's the W-78 Life Extension Program, which would create yet another nuclear warhead. This boondoggle was originally set to cost $26 million, and now it's cost over $5 billion. Why would this Congress approve yet another taxpayer bailout of failed nuclear weapons technology? Finally, there's a uranium processing facility, which was supposed to manufacture components for nuclear warheads. This project was supposed to cost $1.5 billion. Now, it's cost over $6.5 billion and is 4 years behind schedule. Frankly, American taxpayers can't afford a Congress that keeps throwing good money after bad on these unnecessary nuclear weapons programs. Now, I'm sure the other side will talk about how we need to maintain our nuclear arsenal, and this amendment isn't about that. If this amendment passes, the bill still appropriates over $7 billion for nuclear weapon activities. In reality, it makes no sense to increase spending on nuclear weapons when we've agreed to responsibly reduce our nuclear stockpile. This is no longer the era of the Cold War, where we have another nation-state gearing a large percentage of their GNP towards competing with us on the nuclear weapons front. We are and will remain, even with the passage of this amendment, the global leader on both developing and deploying nuclear weapons technology. This simply isn't a responsible way to govern and reduces our national security. To spend more money than we can afford on national security and to borrow it from countries like China makes our nation less secure, not more secure. I would urge the House to listen to the experts who are telling us not to throw good money after bad. Let's get our budget under control. Let's get our budget on the right track by spending money on programs that are proven to protect our country, not on boondoggles that continue to toss taxpayers year after year after year without increasing our security. We need to make hard choices to get our country back on the path to fiscal sanity. Well, this Polis-Markey amendment is an easy choice. Vote for the Polis-Markey amendment and against spending hundreds of millions of additional dollars on redundant and unneeded nuclear weapons technology on top of the $7 billion base included in this bill, which already allows us to be the unchallenged global leader in developing and deploying nuclear weapons. I urge a yes vote on the Polis-Markey amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Jimmy yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from New Jersey?
Move to strike the last word, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong opposition to this amendment. Assuring funding for the modernization of our nuclear weapons stockpile is the most critical national security issue in our energy and water bill. The Secretary of Energy must certify to the President that our nuclear stockpile is reliable. It's absolutely essential that these funds be put in the bill and kept in the bill. With years of level funding, we've put off for too long the type of investments that are needed to sustain our nuclear capability as our stockpile ages. That's why the 2010 Nuclear Posture Review concluded that additional funding was essential to ensure that our infrastructure is adequately maintained and our warheads receive the refurbishments they need to remain reliable and effective. And there has been strong bipartisan support for carrying out the recommended increases in modernization funding. This amendment unacceptably strikes funding for these priority investments, which are both urgent and long overdue. I strongly urge my colleagues to make defense a priority and to vote no on this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back. For what purpose? Gentleman from Massachusetts rise. Gentleman moves to strike the requisite number of words is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. I rise in support of the Polis amendment. He and I are making this amendment so that we can once again demonstrate the lack of compatibility of the priorities of this budget to the overall well-being of our country. The Cold War ended 20 years ago. We won. And since that time, there has been a dramatic reduction in the number of nuclear weapons that both the United States and the former Soviet Union deploy. That number continues to drop. And yet here in this budget, there is additional profligate spending on new nuclear weapons programs, weapons modernization. Well, let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen. Each nuclear submarine that the United States has 96 independently targetable nuclear warheads. That means that every single nuclear commander of a submarine in the United States can destroy the entire country of Russia, can destroy the entire country of China, each American nuclear submarine commander. And neither Russia nor China knows where those submarines are. We should be proud of ourselves. We are 10 feet tall compared to the Russians, compared to the Chinese. And by the way, any problems that we have with Iran or Syria in terms of Russian support for them or Chinese support for them, they have nothing to do with our nuclear weapons capability. That's not influencing them one way or the other. And if we needed to ever drop a nuclear bomb on any one of our enemies, let's just say we had a war with Iran, after the nuclear sub-commander in the United States Navy sent one nuclear weapon towards Tehran, what would the next target be? What are we doing out here? Why are we talking about additional nuclear weapons in the 21st century? Why are we talking about cutting Medicare, cutting Medicaid, cutting programs for poor children, cutting nutrition programs for poor children, and at the same time saying that we need more nuclear weapons? This is a Wayback Machine. It's a Cold War time machine that basically says that the inexorable investment of political capital already made continues to drive the investments of the future. That we aren't going to step back and reevaluate that we won the Cold War. That we're not going to have a nuclear war with Russia. That we're not going to have a nuclear war with China. That we are 10 feet tall. And even if all there is parity, each country understands that it's a total annihilation to use these weapons. Let's save this money. Vote aye on the Polis Amendment. Send a signal to the world. Send a signal to our own people that at least we can find some expenditure in the defense budget which we can cut, which is not related to our national security. That's all that we ask from you, to please, on one vote, on the nuclear weapons issue, where we don't need new weapons, that there is a vote for sanity, that there is a vote that we send as a signal to the rest of the world and to our own people that we understand that that nuclear arms race is over. Vote aye on the Polis Amendment.
What purpose, gentleman from Indiana, rise?
Strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman, rise in reluctant opposition to the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado and Massachusetts. Do believe, given the work of the subcommittee, that the dollars that are contained in it represent an attempt to ensure that looking down the road with the hopeful ratification of the New START Treaty, we will be consistent with those funding levels that will be required. While a world without nuclear weapons would be my preference, while the U.S. must maintain its deterrent capability today, we should also maintain the capabilities necessary to ensure that they are safe and effective. The gentleman from Massachusetts rightfully asked, are there any savings that we can see under the defense accounts, whether at the Department of Defense or Department of Energy, and would point out one of the eliminations in this year's budget are monies for the Chemistry Metallurgical Research Replacement Nuclear Facility. And so would again emphasize to my colleagues that the subcommittee tried to look at this account with great specificity to remove those items that were not necessary and to spend our tax dollars wisely, and would yield back my time.
Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado? Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentleman from Colorado.
Mr. Chairman, on that I request a recorded vote.
Gentleman requests a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado will be postponed. The clerk will continue to read.
Page 30, line 14, Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation, $2,283,024,000.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment. Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Burgess of Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is very straightforward. This amendment would strike the $100 million from the Nuclear Nonproliferation Account, which has been earmarked by the committee for a bailout of a failing uranium enrichment company. This $100 million could then be put toward deficit reduction. This has nothing to do with taking away money from national security and everything to do with ending bailouts to a failed business model. 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, this Congress created by charter the United States Enrichment Corporation, believing USEC could better run the uranium enrichment facilities than the government itself. But after 2 decades, you look at the situation and realize it ain't happening. Congress was wrong. Since its inception, USEC has squandered billions of dollars in federal bailouts, running its operations to near insolvency because of poor decisions and, dare I say, corporate incompetency. Yearly, USEC comes to Congress and to the executive branch, hat in hand, begging for millions of dollars in bailout money to continue operation sites that are technologically out of date. It is time that the federal government ended the endless bailouts to this enterprise. Moreover, USEC has been a bad faith actor in negotiations with the uranium mining industry, which provides the needed raw materials that are enriched at these facilities. You always ask yourself in these deals, who's the winner, who's the loser? We always say Congress shouldn't pick winners and losers. Well, they clearly are. USEC is the winner. The loser are the uranium miners that populate the western United States. What motivation does USEC have to negotiate in good faith when it knows if it doesn't get everything it wants from the miners, it simply goes to the Department of Energy, gets a handout, and then time and time again they either get direct cash payments or they get spent uranium tails. So they have no reason to negotiate with our miners in the western United States. The Department of Energy has a long-standing agreement with the uranium mining industry not to dump any more than 10% of the market's worth of uranium in handouts to USEC at any given time, yet it becomes increasingly clear that the Department of Energy is willing to ignore that agreement and provide the bailout that USEC desires. This betrayal of the mining industry threatens thousands of jobs across the western United States, Texas, Nevada, New Mexico, Illinois, and Wyoming, to name a few. Moreover, arguments that USEC is the only facility that can supply tritium to the Department of Defense ignores the plain language of the Washington Treaty and the U.S.-India nuclear agreement. The Department of Energy has in its possession enough highly enriched uranium and tritium to last for at least 15 years costing hundreds of millions of dollars less than the continued bailouts of USEC that the country is currently obligated. It is time for this Congress to stand up and stop the continual bailouts of a failed business model. Propping up one company at the expense of American workers is not how this body should be operating. Let's end the bailout, return the money to the Treasury, pay down our deficit, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Jimmy yields back. For what purpose? Gentleman from New Jersey, rise.
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Respectfully, a mention was made of congressional earmarks. There are no congressional earmarks in the energy and water bill. This is a presidential priority, but this is not a congressional earmark. Yield back the balance of my time.
Jimmy yields back. For what purpose? Gentleman from Massachusetts, rise.
I rise in support of the Burgess Amendment.
Gentleman moves to strike the requisite number of words and is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank you. After Congress privatized the United States Enrichment Corporation in 1996, we quickly learned that it couldn't survive in the private sector without continued and repeated bailouts to the tune of billions of dollars. We've given it free centrifuge technology. We've given it free uranium that it enriches and then sells at below market prices, undercutting its competitors. We've paid to clean up its radioactive messes. We have assumed its liabilities. And what has happened to these investments? The entire company is worth less than the $100 million contained in this bill. That's the next gift that the Congress is giving to this company. Adam Smith is spinning in his grave so rapidly right now that he would qualify as a new energy source. That's how violative of free market principles this continued subsidy of this company is, knowing that there are other companies that can provide the same resource without the government subsidies. Even after the Department of Energy's recent announcement of another gift of free uranium to USEC, Standard & Poor's downgraded it to junk bond status. I mean, who invests in something that has already achieved junk bond status with the exception of the United States Congress? That's what we're voting on here today. Funding of a company that is now in junk bond status. And J.P. Morgan, the company's creditor, now directly controls every penny USEC spends because it felt the company could not manage its own precarious finances. When I asked the Treasury Department whether government support for the company put taxpayers at risk, it said yes, and that extreme care should be taken before offering any exposure to the taxpayer. But are we following the Treasury Department's advice? No. The Department of Energy has approved hundreds of millions of dollars worth of subsidies for this company and is about to approve another $82 million bailout in the coming days. And Congress has acceded to pressure to insert even more money in no fewer than 3 pieces of legislation that are currently pending, including the $100 million contained in this bill. We've been told this bailout is only about getting the tritium we need for our nuclear weapons. But this is just not true. The treaty that governs uranium enrichment technology does not prevent other companies from doing this work. And even if it did, there are even additional alternatives. When DOE examined its tritium options, it found that downblending surplus highly enriched uranium that it already has would cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars less than obtaining the services from this company. This amendment is supported by a coalition that spans the political horizon that makes it possible for Mr. Burgess, a very conservative member from Texas, to join with a very liberal congressman from Massachusetts in agreeing that the pragmatic center here has lost its bearings. Okay? It has lost touch with the free market principles, and at least if we are going to subsidize something, that it's not already reached junk bond status, and we're continuing to pour good money after bad. This is something that, in my opinion, is unacceptable. The Department of Energy has already given $44 million for this program this year, and it is about to provide another $82 million as it prepares to buy the centrifuges that have yet to be demonstrated to work properly. That's right, $126 million that will buy centrifuges from a company whose total value is now less than $90 million. And as part of the deal, the taxpayers also have to assume liability for the company's nuclear waste. We should not be throwing good money after bad. This is $100 million that should not be wasted. Please support the Burgess-Markey amendment.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today in strong opposition to the Burgess-Markey amendment. Put simply, if this amendment passes, our national security is at risk. The appropriation that this amendment seeks to strike is vital to ensure that America has a domestic source of uranium enrichment. According to U.S. law and nonproliferation treaties that the United States are signatories to, we must have a domestic source of uranium. International agreements prevent us from purchasing enriched uranium from foreign-owned companies for military purposes. If the Burgess-Markey amendment passes, the U.S. would no longer have a domestic source of enrichment and would instead be reliant on a foreign-owned company that has many red flags in its past for uranium enrichment. This amendment is a rerun of a similar attempt by Mr. Markey and our colleague from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce, during debate of the 2013 National Defense Authorization Act a few weeks ago to strip the authorizing language for this uranium enrichment, research, development, and demonstration program. That amendment failed by an overwhelming vote of 121 to 300. Nothing, I repeat, nothing has changed in the last few weeks since that vote and today. Mr. Chairman, some of my colleagues are claiming that the RD&D program is some type of congressional earmark, but this is simply not true. The President of the United States requested the authorization and funding for the RD&D program in his budget request because the administration has determined it is necessary for our national security. Now, I may still be a freshman, but I know enough that in order to be a congressional earmark, that a member of Congress would need to make the request for the program. That didn't happen. Furthermore, in the NDAA legislation, Chairman McKeon added a provision to ensure that taxpayers are protected by requiring any company that participates in the RD&D program to put up their intellectual property rights as collateral. The IP rights are worth billions of dollars and far outweigh any amount of money that the federal government might put towards this program. So to call this an earmark or a bailout is just simply not true. The sponsors of this amendment have also tried to confuse members by saying that we can satisfy our national security needs by downblending existing uranium. While we may be able to do this in the near term, this argument is short-sighted at best. What happens when the government runs out of inventory to downblend and we no longer have a domestic capability to enrich uranium? The other side doesn't seem to have a good response for that question because they know the answer. And the answer is that we need to go forward with the RD&D program to ensure we have a domestic source in the future. It seems some would rather ignore the long-term national security implications of having a domestic source of uranium enrichment. The fact is that if this amendment passes, our nuclear national security could be at risk. Mr. Chairman, I will once again remind my colleagues that this amendment attempts to achieve the same goal that the failed Pierce-Markey amendment did a few weeks ago, and we already know that amendment failed by a very wide margin. I urge my colleagues to defeat this amendment to ensure that our national nuclear security is not outsourced to a foreign-owned company. And with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Indiana, rise.
I'll move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Appreciate the recognition, and to be honest with you, I don't know about conservatives from Texas or liberals from Massachusetts. I'm from Gary, Indiana, and I am here simply to ask my colleagues to not flush $100 million down a drain. That would be my technical argument, and I want to thank the gentleman from Texas, and I want to thank the gentleman from Massachusetts for offering this amendment. I also want to thank the subcommittee chair for reducing the administration's original request that was $150 million for USAC, which is the United States Enrichment Corporation, to $100 million that is contained in this bill. But I must tell you, I have serious disagreement with the committee mark on this and do believe this amendment needs to be adopted. The people of this country work too hard for the tax dollars they send to us to flush this $100 million down a drain. In 2008, when this company applied for a loan guarantee, DOE required USAC to produce a track record of running these centrifuges for a time sufficient to prove that they could be commercialized. This, we were told, would be sufficient to prove the technology. It was not. Further, I would point out that in 2010, $45 million in accounting exchange, in exchange for liability for enrichment services, was provided to the company, essentially for giving them $45 million of liability. This fiscal year 12, $44 million additional dollars in exchange, relieving the company of liability that is now on the taxpayer's book, was put forth. There is a proposal on the table separate from this bill and separate from this amendment to do that exchange of liability for enrichment services a third time for another $82 million because the company needs it. And the question during subcommittee consideration of this issue that was addressed to the Department of Energy is what happens to the taxpayers, what happens to this country if the cost of cleaning up those tailings exceed the liability that was given to the company. That is, what happens if it's not $44 million? What if it's not $45 million? What if it's not $82 million? What if it's $100 million? We eat it. We eat it. And that's wrong. That is wrong. And people ought to adopt this amendment. Several months ago, the claim was that just in another 2 years, just another 2 years, and just another $300 million would prove the technology. Now today, the department is saying this program would make progress, not prove the technology. They would make progress towards proving the technology. It was mentioned that on May 15th, the company was downgraded by Standard & Poor. Last month, USAC was warned that it was in danger of being delisted by the New York Stock Exchange. Delisting would mean that the company's stock would essentially be reduced to speculative penny stock status, reducing the market for the company's shares. And last month, the department announced again this very complicated deal relative to the tailings. This deal takes the most compelling argument away from funding USAC's American Centrifugal Project, because last month USAC, the Department of Energy, Northwest, and TVA agreed to keep the enrichment plant USAC operates, the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant, in operation for another year by re-enriching uranium tailings. The point I would make is that the transfer of these tailings results in enough U.S. origin low-enriched uranium for 15 years. In addition, the National Nuclear Security Administration can access the mixed oxide facilities for backup low-enriched uranium for an additional 4.5 years. The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Johnson, talked about the long term. That is the long term. That's 2 decades from now. And the technology that USAC is using today is 20 years old. And the National Nuclear Security Administration has not evaluated alternatives, but it has the time to do so. Again, we need to make a decision here, and the decision ought to be to adopt this amendment and to save the taxpayers $100 million, and I yield back my time.
Time of the gentleman's expired. For what purpose, gentleman from New Mexico rise? The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
In support of the Burgess-Markey amendment. With all due respect to my friend from Ohio who says that this is a national security issue, the Department of the Navy has said they have enough material to last them through 2050. We have plenty of time to start from scratch to bid the project out. If the contention of our friends is that we must have a U.S. company that produces this material, then start the bid process today. We have until 2050. USEC has attempted for over 30 years to develop a centrifuge and has yet to do it. They've had over $5 billion given to them. If they get this bailout, then they're going to continue operations with the request for another $2 billion, at which point are we, the designated representatives of the people, going to stand and say that other people can do that. Right now, the Department of Energy is saying the only scientists in the country that we can fund are at USEC. I sincerely disagree with them. I do not believe we should have foreign-owned corporations providing this material, but we have plenty of time now if we start. We're told that we do not have the intellectual property if we somehow take the funds away, if we don't give them. What intellectual property is available when a company has spent $5 billion to create 38 machines, 6 of which have had catastrophic failures? One split the case, which stops the whole program when you split a case because that would cause a leak of radioactive material. It is time for the Congress simply to say what they want, to go to bid and allow the best bidder in the nation, the best developer, the best minds in the nation to come together and develop what we want. Stop funding a failed corporation that was at risk a month ago of being pulled off of the New York Stock Exchange, that has been downgraded. USEC had 90% of the world market. They had 90% of the U.S. market when they were given the company and privatized. They were given $1 billion worth of tails, $1 billion worth of product, and 90% market share, and they've squandered that market share down to 10%. Several years ago, they put those tails on the open market and collapsed the uranium market. Who sells product? What viable company sells the raw materials out the back door that they were given and collapses the world market? That's the company that I'm saying the Burgess-Markey Amendment simply doesn't bail out. The head of that company last year paid himself $5 million. Taxpayer bailout dollars are going to pay the executives of this company elaborate salaries when they're not producing anything. If the company were as good at producing centrifuges as it is getting government handouts, they would have long ago succeeded in developing the capacity to make centrifuges. Other countries, other companies, other nations have centrifuges by the hundreds of thousands operating, and this nation, after $5 billion, has 38 that don't operate. Just stop the game, stop the bailout. I yield back the balance of my time.
Chairman yields back. Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no.